Welcome to the Home Team Sacramento podcast. I'm Josh Takimoto, one of your hosts. Kevin Bracey is not here today, but that's okay because we have an awesome guest, one of our friends from the Character Combine podcast, Coach Dana Smith. He's the wrestling coach at Carnegie Middle School. He's also a teacher at Carnegie, and he's also a Positive Coaching Alliance trainer. Coach, did I miss anything?
No. Athletic director for our middle schools in the district, which we've been doing some kind of cool stuff.
Awesome.
But the pandemic kind of challenged us a little bit. So we've been doing some kind of cool stuff there too.
Okay. So, and on top of that, an athletic director. So he does it all. And also a huge fan of The Office and the San Francisco Giants, which I'm a fan of both those things. So
absolutely,
I like Coach Smith for a lot of different reasons, but I'm enjoying this is the 15th. I'm enjoying your advent calendar with all the Office characters.
Yeah. I just posted tonight, actually, right before I got on here.
I must have missed it. Who was it today?
It's, what's her name? Shoot, I'm drawing a blank right now. Meredith.
Meredith, very nice. That was awesome. I saw the Goldface one the other day. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Yeah. We got my daughter an advent calendar, but it's Blue's Clues and it's just chocolate inside. So she's loving it. I can
deal with that too.
Yeah. She's like, are you sure it's not the 16th too? I'm like, no, it's just the 15th. We'll get to the 16th tomorrow. But anyways, Coach, man, we're so thankful that you're here. I always appreciate the time we have to chat because you do such an awesome job, and the way you break things down is amazing. Obviously, what you do as a Positive Coaching Alliance trainer is incredible. And so we just want to kind of pick your brain a little bit. But before we, ask some of the specific questions I have, give us a little bit of your background, your athletic background, coaching background, and then how you ended up as a teacher and a wrestling coach.
Well, I'm a local guy, grew up in Orangeville and Fair Oaks, played Little League, wrestled from like 8 until sophomore year, played baseball, from 8 all the way through high school, played football from the time I was 8 all the way through high school. Ended up teaching at the middle school that I went to Bella Vista, and then went up to Chico, got my BA up at Chico, and then I have a master's degree from the University of Missouri's Positive Coaching and Leadership program, which is absolutely amazing. I didn't do my master's until I was early 50s, and it was a real challenge and a real push to make me grow and get better. And that's, that led me to become a trainer with Positive Coaching Alliance, which I'd done a lot of work with them before as an athletic director and bringing them in to train coaches. And like right from day one, when they came online using their materials with my own coaching and my own teams. But it's just really, I think it's just evolved from the people that I had as coaches and the type of men that they were. And, you kind of coach how you were coached when you first start out, and then you evolve from there and grow from there. And it all led into kind of positive coaching and what are we trying to do with youth sports in reality. And it's not just win, it's trying to use sports to help kids grow and become better people.
100%. When I went to Sierra College, one of the very first courses I took was an English class, and it was a writing class. And I'll never forget, because the professor came in the class and he said, "Hey, I want to make this very clear. I'm not just an English teacher. I majored in writing." He said, "So basically what I say goes, because I know what I'm talking about." And so that really stuck out to me. It's like, okay, he's really passionate about writing specifically. And every time we talk and I hear your story, one of the things that sticks out to me is that you got your degree or your master's in a program that specified, or that was specific to positive coaching. And so when you're doing all these things and coaching your young athletes, and you're doing the stuff with Positive Coaching Alliance, like, to me, it's like, oh, this dude is really passionate about positive coaching, because it wasn't like, oh, it's kind of cool, let me join this program. You actually studied this. And right. So I always thought that was really interesting. So at what point did you realize you wanted to study that specifically?
Well, being involved with Positive Coaching Alliance, that was real thread, but I didn't go out looking for a program in positive coaching. I was looking for a program in coaching, and Coach Lee at Bella Vista and Coach Lane at Bella Vista, we were going to do it together. And we didn't want to do a jump through the hoops kind of program just to get our master's. We were going to do it. We wanted to grow and learn.
Sure.
And literally doing internet searches for coaching programs, I stumbled on this program at the University of Missouri. And I'm like, I don't know really what you guys want to do with this, but this is the one I like. And it was actually fairly affordable for a master's program.
Sure. Yeah.
But I pushed it because I really wanted to do some positive coaching stuff. And when we got into that program, it is probably the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. Definitely educationally, the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life. And we were, Dr. Brandon Orr was running the program at that time. Dr. Sullivan's running it now, and he's fantastic too. And we've actually interviewed him on a podcast, and he's absolutely fantastic as grow the program. But Dr. Orr was one of those guys, like, he knew how to push you. He knew what buttons need to be pushed. And I talked to him on the phone, from Missouri late at night, and had a half-hour conversation with him about one question. And at the end, he's like, I know you want to say the answer, just say it. And I said what was on my mind. He goes, okay, good. Now have a good night. But he's that type of person, and we're still in contact with him. But it just ended up being this amazing program. And it was kind of like, I didn't know what I didn't know until I knew it after going through that program. And it's so research-based. And if you're looking honestly to get better performance out of athletes, positive coaching is the way to go. It's not just better for people, it's better for athletic performance and what you get out of athletes. So it was super powerful.
I love that. And I don't think I've ever asked you this question. I don't know why it's just popping into my head now, but something that I've mentioned on a lot of podcasts that I've done, and something I find really interesting, because I think sometimes people hear this idea of positive coaching and they think there's this misconception with some people that it means you let a lot of stuff go. You're not critical. You're not, there's no constructive criticism. And I always felt the opposite. I felt like if you're doing positive coaching, you can't do positive coaching without calling an athlete out every once in a while. If the correction needs to be made, it's all about how you do it. But if you don't correct what they're doing wrong, both on the mat or off the mat, then you're really not having the full positive impact. But I mean, just tell me a little bit about that. Do you feel like that's a misconception that you hear out there, or is it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Like, is it something you feel like you have to constantly explain to people?
Well, I think when I'm doing workshops, you're kind of preaching to the choir,
Sure.
in a sense, but you do have to talk about the fact that, we have to give criticism. We have to give feedback, or they're not going to get better. But it's about, like you said, how you do it. But it's also about, if you're a positive coach, you're building relationships where your athletes are open to that criticism and they trust you criticizing them, knowing that it is meant to help them get better and help them grow as athletes and as people. Like you said, it's not just in the sport, it's out of the sport. In fact, in our program, and this is something I started after I did the program at Mizzou, we focus on what's called arete or RT. I've heard it pronounced both ways, but it's a Greek word that just means, it's the idea of pursuing excellence in all aspects of your life. And we break it down into areas of like attitude, respect, empathy, ethics, team, right?
Yeah.
Made a little poem out of it, so to speak, a little acrostic out of it.
Nice.
But we talk about what that means on and off the mat, like have bullet points of what ethics mean on the mat and what ethics mean off the mat, and talk about that in a classroom and just in life, and how we just carry ourselves as people. But when you start talking about those things, your criticism fits within those areas, right? And if you built those relationships and explain what those items mean, then it's going to be accepted, and athletes will respond to it in a better way because it's coming from a positive place and a relationship that's strong.
And so they basically know that when that's that criticism, they're like, that team, the wrestling group, that team is a safe place. So even if they fail, they know, hey, it's all good, because everybody around me, teammates, coaches, they all have my best in mind. And I always felt like, even that, I mean, you said this earlier, that positive coaching, you get better performance because, I've always been fascinated by this idea that you just perform freer, right? Like, you're in the moment. You don't have to think about, there's not this thing in the back of your mind where there's a little voice saying, okay, if you mess up, then the entire team's going to hate your guts. Coach is going to yell at you. Like, it's hard to perform that way based on like fear. But if you're just in the moment, it's like, hey, I know subconsciously, whatever I do, they're still going to love me. They're still going to have my back, even if they have to critique me. they still have my back. And then it's like, you don't have to think about those things. You can just focus on making the shot, hitting the ball, wrestling. I was trying to think of a wrestling example. I couldn't think of one. Your next move, I don't know. But it's interesting. No, let me ask you this, kind of changing directions a little bit. Like, where did your passion for wrestling come from? Because I've heard some people say, like, wrestling, it's one of the hardest sports. I've even heard some people say, like, if you're looking to have fun, wrestling is probably not necessarily the sport you want to do, because it's like you're putting your body through hell for, I don't know how many minutes you guys wrestle in middle school, but like, it's not very long. I mean, it's, for like 3, 4, 5 minutes. And it's like,
Right.
all the training that you guys do is crazy. And the what you put your body through is intense. So like, how did you get into this, and why are you so passionate about this sport specifically?
Oh yeah. Coach Lee, Mike Lee, who was at Bella Vista, and we ended up doing our student teaching together at Carnegie. So when he went back to BV, and he went to school there and wrestled in that program when it was crazy good, like second, third in the state, like the years that we were going to high school there. It was Coach Charlie Lee built that program into just a dynasty, basically.
Yeah.
And when Mike took it over, he rebuilt the whole thing. And there was a couple of years when he was like, hey, why don't you take over the program at Carnegie? Why don't you? And I'm like, I don't know. If I do that, I know I'm competitive. It will take over my whole life. And finally, when I said yes to do that, it wasn't, yes, it's wrestling is what we built everything around. But my passion for it is about teaching kids, and this program that we built that is part of our community and has brought in all these great people that we work with over the years, and all these great kids we work with over the years that we're still connected to. We had, this will be a perfect example of where the passion comes from. We have 3 young women who wrestled in our program. 2 wrestled for me, all 3 wrestled at Bella Vista. All 3 of them are in Ukraine right now training with the US team. Wow. That women's team has 3 girls from the same high school training for that team. And they are all amazing people, just fantastic people. And when you see that, that's positive coaching, right? That's where that passion comes from, is you see that you have played a little role in these people's lives, and you look at where they are now and the amazing things they're doing and the great people that they are. And that's where it comes from. That's where the reward comes from. It's just all built around wrestling. Wrestling just happens to be the sport that we're doing, which is a fantastic sport. Yeah. And lends itself really well to building resilience and grit and all those characteristics that we want to see in people later in life.
I love that. I always appreciate Coach, you always give really clean sound bites. I appreciate that. So when I have to search for a clip, it's not difficult, and I'm not joking. It is helpful. I've done a lot of podcasts over the last 3 years, and sometimes it's like, man, I'm gonna have to really stretch this one out, because it's not a clean sound bite. But I always appreciate that about you, Coach. That's amazing though, that you guys have three wrestlers that are training with the Olympic team right now, and kind of tying that into this idea of being on the home team. We're all a part of the home team in Sacramento, in the greater Sacramento area. We all want the same thing. If you promote character and competition, healthy competition, like, we all want the same thing. We want to make this city better through coaching, through athletics. But that's got to be, like you kind of alluded to it already, but that's such a cool thing for our home team here in Sacramento, that 3 athletes are out there right now training with this Olympic team. I mean, and you kind of said it, it's like, they're amazing people. So while they're over there, they're representing our home team of Sacramento really well. And I always love hearing stories like that, because that's what it's about. Like, we always feel, a pride. I mean, you have all these athletes from Sacramento, Eric Armstead, Logan Webb, Shaq Thompson. I mean, the list goes on. There's so many people from Sacramento that are doing great things, and we all feel a sense of pride. So when you have these athletes, not only for you, like for you specifically, not only is it Sacramento, but it's from your guys' program, like people that are connected with these athletes, and the families, and what a cool experience.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that the pride of that, and the athletes you're talking about, it's the same thing, because knowing them, what great people they are and how hard they work for what they have. And that you just beam with pride from that. They deserve what they have. And it's so, you have to get lucky to be able to do that. Jennifer Page is one of those. She's the eldest of the trio, and she's gone through injuries and battled back and been with different clubs, but she's also has a master's degree. She's got her education while she's been doing all this. It's just amazing. I look at what she's accomplished, and it just blows me away. It's mind-boggling, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. Well, and you mentioned pride. Obviously you've mentioned a couple of times that you are coaching at the same school that you graduated from, and I know you do a lot of work with Bella Vista as well, the school that you graduated from. How, like, what was the feeling like when you got the job at Carnegie and you're connected to Bella Vista? Like, what was that feeling like? Because I think it's so cool when coaches come back to the programs. We see it right now. Like Casey Taylor, the football coach, is at Oak Ridge. He went to Oak Ridge. That's got to be a crazy feeling. Our friend Coach Cody Norman out in Laguna Creek, he went to Laguna Creek. All these different Manteca, Coach Mary Tolbert, like she played there, and there's like this extra sense of pride when they're coaching, because those are the same halls that you walk through. Those are the same. Right. In some cases, you're rubbing shoulders with the same teachers that you had, like Kira McKechnie. So what was that like for you? I guess a couple of questions. When you first found out that you got the job there, and then every day when you step onto the mat to coach those athletes, obviously you love the athletes, you love coaching, but like, what is it, the feeling like when you get to coach at the school, basically your home team?
Well, honestly, it wasn't my intention to end up there. Honestly, when I came out of school and was going to be a teacher, I really wanted to teach at the high school level and either be a football or baseball coach. So
really?
Ended up in a middle school. I ended up there subbing as an instructional assistant while I was finishing up one class for my degree, and just kind of ended up back there. A job opened up, and honestly, it was at that time, once I kind of figured out what I wanted to do, if I could have picked one job in the district, it was the job I got at Carnegie, teaching U.S. history at that school. And then the coaching part of it, I wrestled there. I have 2 pictures on my wall in my classroom of me wrestling in our MP room at Carnegie. And the coach on the other side for Sylvan is a person that ended up being a principal in the district and helps us with our wrestling programs in our schools as well. And he's a ref. So it just kind of all comes together. And I think that part of it, of where you grew up and what you got from the community, instills that in you, like, okay, I'm set up perfectly to give back. I'm right there where I took stuff from. I get to give that back now. And I think that's one of the things that really keeps you going. You're going to coach for over 20 years. You have to have a lot of times and things keep you going. And honestly, that attachment to Carnegie and coaching there is something that I guess keeps you young, so to speak. When you're still putting on wrestling shoes and getting out and showing moves and running practices, it's still giving back. You feel like you're giving, but you're always getting more than you give when you're teaching in your own community and coaching in your own community and in programs that you were in.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about coaching. And I think sometimes it's like we forget it sometimes, that by coaching and doing an excellent job with the young men and women that you're coaching, you're having an impact beyond the walls of the wrestling room or beyond the football field or baseball field or basketball court. Like your influence is really stretching beyond that. And that's why I've always felt that, and not just because I'm married to one, but teachers and coaches are incredibly important. I mean, you guys don't get paid enough, obviously, and you guys put in a ton of work, and that work is it's not like a regular 9 to 5. It comes with a lot of stress, comes with a lot of challenges, a lot of frustration, but it's an incredibly important job that you guys do. And especially when you're a teacher coach, there's almost like, to me, there's almost like an extra level of responsibility, because we always say that when you're in season, the coach is around the athletes probably more than they're around their parents or their own family. You as a teacher coach at the same school, they can't get away from Coach Smith. Like, they're just gonna get that positive energy no matter where they go. It's like, hey, I'm gonna go down this hallway. Oh, there he is again. Now I got to go to wrestling practice. There he is again. They just can't escape it. So whether or not they like it, like, they're always gonna be around that positive energy you bring. And I think that's a really cool thing. And I want to get your perspective on this, because we just had Jason Tenner, the football coach at West Park High School, on, and he was really encouraging young people to be on campus coaches, so be teachers and coaches. Like, how do you feel about it, since you are one? Like, how important do you think that is And what maybe some words of encouragement would you give to maybe someone who's getting ready to go to college and trying to find their path, and maybe they want to coach, but they're not so sure about the teaching side of things? Like, what encouragement would you give, and tell us why it's so important to you?
Well, first of all, I would tell them what you're going to get out of it is absolutely amazing. People talk about legacies, and that's a big important word, but you do get an opportunity to leave something behind, right? If you're going to teach and coach in a community, and you can stay there, which is hard as well. I'm kind of a rare breed now that's been at a school for almost 30 years or 30 years and been coaching for over 20 at the same school, but the rewards from that are amazing. And I think it's critical to have on-campus coaches, and it is very hard to find them now. Mm-hmm. We really have to work hard to do that. So even getting younger people into it that can build their own programs and do that sort of thing is critically important. And when you talk about being on campus, the relationships you build with those athletes are a totally another level, because you push, you hold them accountable, in the classroom, in the hallways. I was talking to my kids about behavior on campus yesterday. And I said, just think about this, like with the letters, what would Coach Smith think if he saw you? And if you think I'd be happy with you and proud, then do it. If you think I wouldn't be, then don't do it. But that impact you can have when they know you're there, right?
Sure.
They know that teachers email me if they're having issues. They know that teachers talk to me if they're having issues, but they also know teachers email me and talk to me when they've done something great, and I can bring that up in front of the whole team. So those things are just incredibly powerful, and the feelings that you get as a coach and a teacher to be able to do that for and with kids and with your colleagues to help them, it's amazing. It's just an amazing profession. It's part of why they don't have to pay us a lot, because they know we'll do it because we love it and we love
Fair
kids
enough.
and we want to make a difference.
Sure.
But that reward is there, and the impact that you can have on a campus, and like you said, a community, by being an on-campus coach and being involved with kids like that, it's incredible. Yes, it takes a lot of time. It's a lifestyle, really. If you're interviewing a football coach, you talk about time.
Yeah.
Into a program, that's unbelievable what those guys have to do. But what they can build and what they can do with the community, positive or negative, right? Depending on which way, what type of coach they are,
Sure.
It can go both ways. But if you're a positive coach, and that impact on the community is incredible for any sport. But football teams are so big, it's even bigger. And I think that type of a sport is an easy kind of, not easy, but a ground level way to kind of enter coaching, where you don't have to be the head coach, right? You can go be an assistant and kind of get that part of your game down, and then start changing what you do and how you get bigger.
Right. Now, I hope you don't mind me asking this, and feel free not to answer if you don't want to, but do you live in or near the community that you teach in?
Yeah, I'm 5 miles away from school.
Wow. Okay. So that's always an interesting thing to me, because I've obviously had a lot of conversations with coaches and teachers, and it is interesting the different perspective that they have, because some are like, hey, I teach a long way from the school I coach at or teach at, because I'm just not interested in running into those little people while I'm when it's my weekend. And then other people, again, Jason Tenner, Coach Horner, same thing, yourself, all these people. I think Mary Jo is a similar situation. Like, you guys all chose to live in the communities that you teach at, which is not always common. I'm sure you have colleagues that are like, yeah, absolutely not. I'm going to try to get as much space between me and the school as possible. Was that intentional? Was it, because I can't imagine it was just because you wanted a shorter commute. I feel like,
right.
You know what I mean? I imagine that it was because of this broader perspective of impact that you have. But like, it was just, I'll stop talking, but was that part of the decision, is that you wanted to continue to pour into that community?
I think it just kind of happened, partly probably because I grew up here, and
Sure.
It was a comfortable area to live in, right?
Sure.
But this is really funny. I have a twin sister, and she has not lived in Sacramento for, I don't know the exact number, so she'll call me on this, but like 25 years, right?
Sure.
She's been in Santa Rosa. So she just moved back here in April. My brother-in-law retired. They bought a house in Carmichael and moved back here. probably the first 10 times that we went out and did something in the Fair Oaks area, I ran into somebody I knew. And she's like, do you know everybody in this town? I'm like, no, this doesn't happen all the time. But you have to understand, I've lived in this community and taught and coached in this community for a long time. I know a lot of people in the community.
Yeah.
It's, and that's a good feeling. You know, you run into people and you have a positive interaction with them. That's good. That's a nice thing.
Yeah.
And I live that perfect distance of, I don't live in the attendance area, but I live close to school.
Sure. It's a good call. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And like I said, that's again, that's part of the reason why we call this home team, is because, you know, it's all about the area that you coach at. And it's not just the school that you coach at, but the surrounding area. Like we see how, you know, you go to, you go to the Rayleighs on Madison and Hazel, and you see, you know, the Bella Vista fireworks booth, and you go to, again, I went to Castle, you go down to the Denny's on Greenback, and you see a bunch of, especially during football season, you see a lot of kids there after football games and after school. And it's just a cool thing. So when you have that community and you see people within the community, and I'm sure because you've been coaching for such a long time, like now you see people, you don't just see students in the community, but you're seeing people that maybe are working, have businesses in the community, or maybe they're parents in the community now, you know what I mean? With really young kids. Like that's gotta be a cool thing too, because like you're kind of in a weird way seeing some of your legacy in front of you, like in real time.
Right. I guess it kind of goes both ways, where when somebody tells you their parents had you as a teacher, it's like, oh wait, how long have I been doing this? Right.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, that's part of, if people are mentioning it and you've been there that long and you've had an impact, I think that's a great thing. You know, that's another step in your career where you're going, where it kind of starts going full circle, and that's a good experience.
Let me ask you this, because this is one of my favorite questions to ask people, because I think it puts them on the spot a little bit, but I just love hearing the reasons why. But one of the questions I ask on here pretty often is, obviously you've coached for a while, you've coached against a lot of schools, you've coached against a lot of coaches. Obviously we're all competitive. We like the competition. We like going head to head with someone, even if it's going to head with another coach. But that being said, as we say often on the show, we're all a part of this home team. So we wear different uniforms. We compete against each other. There's only one winner and one loser, unless you're in a sport that ties. But, you know, at the end of the day, our goal is the same. We want to impact the lives of the students and the communities around us. That being said, if you had to shout out one coach that you've coached against over the years that you feel is an exceptional example of character, integrity, doing competition the right way, having the influence and understanding their influence, who would that one coach be?
Well, I'd say there's a lot of coaches in our district that I could say that about, but I'll say schools, because they had groups of coaches that I've coached against, and I'll go outside the district just to show the home team part of it, right? For the area.
I love it.
Kerr Middle School.
Okay.
Fantastic coaches who I love coaching against, because they're good, right?
Yeah.
Their program's good, but we laugh together, we joke together, we would help each other out with anything. But when we're wrestling against each other, right, it's not mean, but it's like we want to beat each other, right? And then Folsom Middle School had a pair of coaches that were just great, and it was the same thing, super competitive with them, in the race for titles with them, but great people, and you just love to see them. Like when you go to a tournament, it's like, oh great, the Folsom guys are here. Yeah. The Kerr guys are here, and that's part of what makes it fun, right? The adult part of it, and trading ideas and talking about the programs and talking about the kids, and that's the way it should be. I truly feel that coaches have an obligation to help each other, to grow your sport, to mentor younger coaches. If there's a new coach, invite them to a practice to come see what you do. It's not a secret, right? Yeah. I'm not doing anything that's a secret.
Right.
I'm just trying to figure it out like you are, but I've been doing it longer, so maybe I know more of the things than you do. So come into my room, come spin a practice, bring some of your kids. And we've done combined practices in our MP room with Sylvan before and with Pasture, like in 2 different days. Like, come on over, let's set up a couple of mats in the gym. Let's practice together, right? I don't have anything to hide. Yeah. I don't know it all. I'm doing what I'm doing and figuring it out. And if we can help each other, then we're helping the whole community. And I kind of went on a tangent of your original question, but that's the idea, right? Those are the coaches that you enjoy coaching against, the ones that you invite into your room anytime, and they would do the same to help each other and to help grow the sport and do what's best for kids.
I love that. That's an awesome idea. I mean, I know in baseball we had scrimmages against other schools, before the season started, but I just kind of assumed that was just a baseball thing, and I didn't know other schools did something similar. But that's a really interesting way of looking at it. And I mean, you're right that there's no better way to kind of exemplify this idea of home team other than saying, hey, come work out with us, come practice with us. We know we're going to compete against you guys at some point, but still, like, our goal is to make everybody better.
Right.
So I think that's an incredible way to do it, for sure. So what is the, I guess, the state of wrestling and at the youth level, middle school level, and high school level? Because to be honest with you, and I told you this before, I don't know anything about wrestling. I know it. Like I said, all I know is that when I was conditioning for baseball, I felt like less of a young man because of what I saw the wrestlers doing. It's like, they're like, hey, we just ran 3 miles as a warm up. Like, oh, we ran 3 miles total and we were done for the day. And so, it's just interesting seeing all that stuff. That's pretty much the extent of what I know. But I'm just curious, like with the, obviously the explosion over the last however many years with like the UFC and MMA, has that increased the interest in wrestling? I know obviously COVID, that was, I mean, you guys were one of the worst sports when it came to COVID,
Right.
because it's literally, you can't get any closer than wrestling. And so I know
Nope.
you and basketball, I think, were the two sports that really,
Yeah.
really took a hit. But that aside, like, what is the state, the interest, I mean, what does it look like in the wrestling community right now?
Well, I think you're right in the fact, UFC and MMA giving it a boost.
Sure.
The biggest growth area for wrestling right now is women's wrestling.
Sure.
It's growing by leaps and bounds. They're adding programs at colleges. Iowa just added a women's team to their program. That's huge.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely huge that a big wrestling school like Iowa, ranked #1, that they would add women's wrestling. So that's
Wow.
really our biggest growth area right now. I think we're going to have some work to do. Like you said, the COVID part of this,
Mm-hmm.
we were shut down for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And this year it's still, our kids test every week.
Mm.
I have, you went to Pasture, so you know the wood shop at Pasture, right?
Yeah. Mr.
That's the
Feldman.
same, that's the same room at Carnegie that is my wrestling room.
Oh,
And
really?
so we have doors at both ends, and those are both open. I have huge fans of both doors, exhaust fans on, air conditioner, heater running, just to keep the airflow going through the room. So that's part of our battle. But really, right now it is at the middle school level, it's like rebuilding a whole program. It's like starting from scratch,
Hmm.
which is fine. It's kind of one of those, I wish I knew then what I know now moments, and you actually get to live that moment because you're starting almost with a new program. Yeah, we have the stuff in place in the foundations, but that's going to be part of our battle. We had great high school kids that miss end of junior, whole senior seasons.
Hmm.
As those younger kids came up, they were finding jobs and doing other things. So it's definitely taken a hit. So we're going to have some work to do for sure.
That's really interesting. That's actually something very similar to what I mentioned on, I think, the first episode of this podcast, where if you want to kind of rebuild a movement or rebuild a program, one of those things that makes it so effective is the fact that you get to bring in like all of the excellence, all of the knowledge, all of the insight and experience you have, but you're not necessarily starting at like, the lowest level. You're starting with all of that, and that's your starting point, rather than, okay, how do I figure out all of this stuff? Like, I mean, it is really interesting, and that is a really cool way of looking at it too, where if you could go back, what would you do? Well, here we go. You kind of went back in
Yep.
an
Have
unfortunate
at
time
it.
machine. Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. But you feel like overall there seems to be, I mean, obviously in the female levels of wrestling, it sounds like it's really starting to boom. But just overall, you feel like it's still, like, there's a lot of interest in it.
Yeah. And I feel that at that college level, we went through a real period of a lot of programs getting cut. And I feel like some of those are starting to come back. I
Cool.
think it's easier to promote the sport with internet feeds and more sports channels and that
Sure.
sort of thing. And they've gotten creative. Like doing outdoor matches in the football stadiums
Mm-hmm.
when it's warm enough, or
Yeah.
even that's one of the things I added to that idea. Well, Cal Poly does a bunch of their matches outdoors because they have great weather there, right? So they'll do them out in the quad. And we do one match every year, weather permitting, out in our student circle. And it's always either Barrett or Pasture.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice. We can get a big crowd out there. We've had our superintendent come to that. We've had, Ron Barney, our AD for the high schools, has come, board members.
Yeah.
But you got to be creative in how you promote it, right? If we want to keep it going in the middle schools, we got to show what we're doing and why it's important on a campus. So be creative and find ways to promote it. And I think wrestling's getting way better at that, figuring out how to get out there and advertise it, and don't just think people are going to come to it. We got to go get them.
Yeah. When you first said that about doing it in the quad, that makes me think of like gladiators and like Roman gladiators like going at it. So I think that's the way that might be the way to promote it. I don't know how the school's going to feel about that, but
yeah,
that seems like the way to promote it. That's awesome.
Yeah, we call it the let's take this outside match.
Honestly, hey, that's creative.
Yeah.
I like that.
Right.
No, that's a great way of doing it. And yeah, it's definitely tough, trying to figure out creative ways to keep going. Because like I said, from what I understand, basketball and wrestling were two of those sports that were hit the hardest just because of indoors for you guys, the proximity of the athletes. And
right.
But like you mentioned before, wrestling is one of the best sports when it comes to teaching resilience and discipline. And I can't think of a more relevant time than now for those things to really
absolutely
be practiced, which is unfortunate. Right. But it's it seems like all these athletes and coaches have been doing just an awesome job this year and through all of it. So as someone who's part of this home team, like we love seeing it. Because like what else can you do?
A quality of people that attracts them to coaching is, I'm going to get this done somehow I'm going to make this happen, right? Yeah. What are my parameters? What are my rules? Okay, right. I can do it within that. I'll figure it out. I'll make it happen. And they've done it. I mean, look at football, the high school football this year.
Yeah,
pretty amazing. I mean, look what Folsom did.
And yeah,
that's incredible. Great stuff. Got through this whole season, and those accomplishments with those kids, that's fantastic.
Well, and we keep going back to it, but I think it's part of what we do in this coaching and athletic community. What Folsom did meant a lot and means a lot to this entire community. Everybody, I know people that don't even watch football, couldn't tell you any of the rules of football, but they're like, hey, that Folsom football team did something pretty cool. It's like, yeah, they did. It makes the whole community proud. And I think, especially in a time like this, that's why the sports movies, right? Like that's why we love sports movies, is because there's these moments in sports movies that inspire you, that make you feel good, that I think motivate you. And that's the incredible thing about sports, is that it has such a powerful positivity built into it if you use it correctly. And I think stories like Folsom, or all these other great stories out there, it's really important to a community. And I think seeing it, seeing those lights when I drive down the freeway, on Friday nights, and seeing, fairly full parking lots with basketball games going on, it's a good thing for sure. And I'm glad we're starting to see some of that come back. But to your point too, you're like, hey, when you find a way when it means a lot. And I think with coaches, if you care about your athletes and that's your why, then I think you guys definitely find a way no matter what it takes. And that's why we appreciate what you guys do.
And, I think, so last spring when we looked at doing track for middle schools, mm-hmm. there was just no way we could do it. The facilities were hard to get. Our meets have so many kids, they would have ended at 1 a.m. So it's like, okay, so what else can we do? So I'm like, let's do cross country. We can make that happen right now. And I think what I realized once it got going, all these young coaches stepped up, didn't know what we were doing. We were putting it together. They were super creative with it, got kids out. But I think what we found out as it got going is, as much as we knew the kids needed it, and that's why we were making it happen, we needed it just as much. We needed to be out there working with kids. We needed to feel a little bit of normal. And those coaches came back, and we added a couple teams, and this year did a full-on season and district championships and everything. Those coaches pulled off 2 seasons in 6 months and brought it into being a new sport in our district for our middle schools. And I was just blown away by everything they did. It was like, here, let's figure this out. And they ran with it. And it was just unbelievable. And that's when you go back to talking about getting young people into coaching, new people coming out of college, that was those people, right? They were all fairly new teachers and jumped in and took on something that was completely new and didn't know where we were going with it. And they pulled it off. And that's what communities need, right? It's something that brings us all together in a good, positive atmosphere when it's done the right way and people take it on with it being about the athletes and how do we help them be better mentally, physically, emotionally, and all that came into play big time throughout, COVID and what we're trying to deal with. It's always there. It just had bright lights flashing on it as we came back and tried to pull this off.
That's incredible. I love hearing stuff like that. And I just have two more questions for you, and then we'll get you out of here because I want to be respectful of your time. And I told you 45 minutes. We're at 39 right now, so make this quick. How important and how special is it for athletes that you coach to come back and invest into your program, the program that kind of helps shape and mold who they are? Like, how important do you feel like that is for a program when alumni can come back and kind of be present, whether they coach or maybe they just visit and share a little bit about their experience at the college level, or maybe not even about sports, maybe they're sharing about what they're doing, or maybe they're just visiting. And then you can kind of point to them and say, hey, that guy or girl used to wrestle for me and they were incredible for X, Y, and Z. Like, how important is it to have people come back and kind of pour back into their home team school?
Super important for a lot of different reasons. Once they carry the culture with them and they bring back and they know those traditions and can talk about that and kind of reinforce your expectations and what you're trying to do. But I think also, when we talk about building confidence in people, part of it is vicarious, that they need to see someone who's like them, who's been successful and can do what they're trying to do. And that instills some confidence in them. So when you bring those people back in that have, wrestled at a Division I school or off wrestling internationally, and you can bring them in or have some way of them connecting with the kids. Jennifer's come in and done practices with our kids. Alex Hedrick has come down that. She's one of the girls that's over there right now too. They've come back and done that. Shane Tucker, who came through our program, was a finalist at the state tournament. He's come back and done practice with us and he's helping out at BV. But those are people that they see like, oh, now talking to them, yeah, their pictures on the wall and they're these greats from our program, but you see them and they're just like you, right? They grew up here, they went to school here, and now they're coming back to help. And it also reinstills that core value of giving back, right? You're being given a lot, you give back, and those people are an example of doing that. So it just hits a lot of values and what you're trying to do in your program. So I think it's critical to do that as much as possible.
Yeah, I completely agree. Last question, the big question. You alluded to it a little bit earlier, but we're going to ask it one more time just to make it its own question. But at the end of the day, when you're not the end of the day, but when you're done coaching, at the end of your coaching career, when you're calling it quits as far as teaching, coaching, all of that, what do you want your legacy to be for this home team?
That I left my community a little bit better. That I left something through my work that made our school, the athletes I worked with, the students I worked with, my community a little bit better. And if everybody can do that, you have a pretty amazing community.
There we go. I could not have said it better myself. Sometimes I'm like, you know what, Coach Smith should probably be doing this podcast instead of me, but we'll settle for having him as a guest so that he doesn't take my job. So Coach, where can they follow you, your program, all that stuff? I know you have a couple of different Instagrams. Are you guys still doing the podcast too?
We do the Skronko Wrestling podcast, which is Coach Lane and I. We do it from time to time, kind of when we find time and guests find time. There are actually a couple really good ones. The last two we did. One is with Dr. Brandon Orr. We interviewed him, who was running our program at Mizzou. And then the three young ladies who are over training, we interviewed them in our last one, and they are amazing. So they can find that. Skronko podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify. And so while we were out of school, I did 25 episodes of one called The Positive Way. So it's all about positive coaching and performance psych, that kind of stuff. Find that in the same places. I'm on Twitter, Carnegie Wrestling, and Positive Ways Skronko podcasts are all on Instagram. So, give us a follow and check it out.
I like to say this: if you can't find Coach Smith based on all that information you just got, you're just not trying. It's not that hard.
I throw it out there.
It's all out there. So give him a follow the program, support that. Coach, as always, man, we appreciate your time. We always appreciate what you're doing for the home team here in Sacramento and these young athletes. We're just thankful that you're a part of our community and part of our team, and that you're doing all the things that you're doing. So this is not the last time we'll have Coach Smith on the podcast. We're going to bother him again at some point. This is the third time I've bothered him on Instagram.
No, it's not a bother at all. And I just want to tell you that I really appreciate what you're doing. I know the work that you're putting in takes a lot of time and a lot of preparation, but it's incredibly valuable to what all of us as coaches are doing, because it gives us another way to steal each other's ideas, right? And to support each other. So I really, truly do appreciate what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Coach. I appreciate the kind words. And hey, have a great holiday, and enjoy your 2 weeks off. By the time this posts, actually, you'll be starting your break by the time this posts. So
not that I'm counting, but I have 2 days left until the break starts.
Man, you won't believe how many times I've heard that. Like, Coach. So my sister's a teacher at Arcade Middle School. My wife's a high school PE teacher. My co-host, Deb from the Character Combine podcast and my other podcast, Connectable, she's a teacher. There's been days where I'll text with my sister, she's like 2 days. Then I'm talking to my wife 2 days. And then I hop on a podcast with Deb and she's like 2 days. The number 2 is like 2, 3, 4. All those days have been ingrained in my head. So I'm very aware of how many days you guys have left.
So I just thought I'd give you one more reminder.
I appreciate that, because when I get off this, my wife's going to say the same thing. So,
right.
So, hey, well, enjoy your break. Any teachers, coaches out there, enjoy your guys' break. And Coach, we will talk to you later. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.